Over the past 8 years of me playing Commander, there's nothing quite like playing Infect. Infect is a strategy that pulls a feeling of dread over a game of Commander. Because of this feeling of dread, in my experience, people tend to target the player who's playing Infect first and try to take them out of the game as quickly as possible. After losing many games playing Infect, I've created some rules for myself when I build Infect decks going into the future. In this video, you're going to learn about some of those strategies while we go over this SnapDax Apex of the Hunt Commander deck. Before we begin, just a huge shout out to everyone that subscribed to the channel. Thank you for being subscribed. If you're not already subscribed, you can subscribe to the channel. It's just a really quick and easy way to say thank you to me for making the videos. Now remember, this Commander deck here is a response to me losing many games at Infect, and I've been able to not lose as many games. I've actually won some games playing with this strategy here. And it's mostly because people don't really know that we're playing Infect. When people don't know that you're playing Infect when you're playing Infect, it gives you a really good chance of winning because you avoid all of that intense attention from people on the board. So what is the point of this deck? What are we trying to do? First, we got to go over the commander. So SnapDax here has mutate. So essentially, we're just going to place SnapDax on top of a creature, and that creature is going to gain double strike. And this also says whenever he mutates, you deal 4 damage to a creature and then you gain 4 life. The only thing that really matters here is that SnapDax has double strike. That's kind of the point of this deck. Because SnapDax has double strike, it's essentially going to allow us to take some of the creatures that we have on the board, mutate SnapDax onto the creature, and whatever buffs that creature had while it was on the board, SnapDax now gains immediately and can usually attack immediately. Which, when we're talking about this deck and the general strategy, it's about alpha striking. It's not about just dealing damage willy-nilly. You're really looking to set up turns where you can just one-shot the person on the board who's the biggest problem to the deck that you're playing, so that you can then reduce the number of players, which will give you a better chance of winning the game. So some of the cards that we have here that make this deck look like it's not an Infect deck is this group of cards right here, which if you're going to build SnapDax, it's your choice whether you want to include these cards or not. It's completely up to you. We have a Blood Mad Vampire here, which essentially just when it deals combat damage, you put a counter on it. So what you're going to notice is all of these cards over here deal damage and then gain counters. This one specifically has flying, which would give SnapDax flying, which would be pretty good. Now, what you're going to notice here is we have a ton of cards. This one has evasion as well, that just gain evasion counters. That just gain counters, right? So why do we want to put counters on our creatures? Why do we want SnapDax to have counters? Now, the special number that we're looking for inside this deck is 2. We just need a creature to have 2 +1/+1 counters. The reason why we're looking for 2 +1/+1 counters is because SnapDax, if you haven't already noticed, is a 3/5. SnapDax with 2 +1/+1 counters is now a 5/7, which means that if he double strikes an opponent with Infect, that is 10 Infect damage, and you just knock somebody out of the game. Now, some of the Infect cards that we have inside here are chosen very specifically. We have a Glistening Oil that's going to put, obviously, Infect on a creature. Phyrexia is going to put Infect. This is going to give Infect. This is going to give Infect. Now, we also have a Flesh Eater Imp that has Infect and has flying and can buff itself. This is probably one of the best cards inside the entire deck, honestly. We have a Whispering Spectre that has Infect and flying to give SnapDax evasion. And then we also have Skithiryx, the Blight Dragon, which has flying and Infect. I mean, Skithiryx just wins games by himself. Now, just keep in mind that while you are playing this deck, you only really want to give things Infect when you're going to attack and deal damage in that turn. In other words, like if I'm sitting here and I have a Phyrexia in my hand, which can give a creature Infect, I'm not just gonna have a vampire on the battlefield and equip this here and then start attacking. You know, that's not the point of the deck. We're not trying to just, I mean, unless this is gonna one-shot somebody, then I would give it Infect. However, we're really just looking to sit back, build counters, and then have a turn where we mutate, Infect, attack, you lose. Now, while we're setting up our board state here, a lot of our creatures here don't really have evasion and need to deal damage in order for them to gain counters. The cards in this pile here really help to allow our creatures to deal that combat damage to gain counters and can help out SnapDax when he has Infect. So we have Rogue's Passage, which is going to give Unblockable. Footfall Crater gives Haste and Trample. This gives Haste and Trample, Trample and Lifelink, and it buffs by 3, which is a lot. This is going to give Trample to a creature that's red. Blood Crusher of Khorne gives Trample. Falconer gives Flying. This is going to give a creature Menace. This also gives a creature with a +1/+1 counter Menace. And this gives Haste and Hexproof. We're really just using these cards here. These cards are simply existing just to buff at minimum the creatures that we have here, so that it puts us in a position to SnapDax mutate onto those creatures. Now, what ends up happening and what you kind of want is that these creatures, like look at this vampire, look at this thing, look at this one, this Bloodcrazed Vampire, look at this. This is 2 mana, a 2/1 that has to attack every turn. This card stinks, guys. This card stinks. But when this 2/1, right, is a 7/8, you know, and it keeps attacking every single turn and it's really big, your opponents they need to respond to this 2 mana creature. So the whole point is that eventually your opponents are going to start casting removal, casting board wipes, and destroying your creatures so that you just don't have them anymore because they're very big. We kind of want that to happen so that when we force our opponents to use removal, they have no removal for SnapDax in the future. So let your creatures sit on the board, let them grow, and force your opponents to cast removal on your own creatures so that they have nothing left when you Infect SnapDax, you win. You understand? So in the case when those things do happen, we do have cards that are going to allow us to get those creatures back depending on what they are. So we have Fated Return, which is 7 mana, but it also gives a creature indestructible that we get from our graveyard. So more importantly, like some of these Infect creatures here with Flying and Infect, we can then give Indestructible, which would then give SnapDax Indestructible, and then we just have this Flying Infect Indestructible double striking Titan on the board. We also have an Entomber Exarch, which gives a creature from our graveyard back to our hand. Cool. But more importantly, I really like that this card forces our opponent to reveal their hand. It really gives us the information we need. Most importantly, if our opponent has removal, we can just know. We have a Morgue Theft, which is also going to give creatures from a graveyard to our hand. This reanimates a creature and puts counters on it. This reanimates a creature and puts counters on it. We also have Sheldred, the Whispering one, which is going to reanimate a creature at the beginning of our upkeep for free. And then we have a Debtor's Knell, which literally does the same exact thing. Now, because we're playing around our graveyard somewhat, our opponents tend to target us with graveyard removal, or they end up exiling our graveyard, honestly. So we have this pile of cards over here that essentially give us, as a player, hexproof. So when they target us to remove our graveyard, unfortunately, they can't. So we have Ivory Mask. We have a Blossoming Calm, which is just a 1 mana instant that gives us hexproof, that gains rebound in case they want to do it again. And then we also have Aegis of the Gods, which is going to give us hexproof. And then this is Spirit of the Hearth, which is also going to give us hexproof on a flying creature. Now, after all of that, we do have a final pile of cards here that are just cards that are generally good inside this commander deck. So we have Umbros, the Dean of Shadow, which most importantly says when a creature you control with a counter on it dies, you draw a card. Just a source of card draw. The Shadow Cat, counter on it dies, you draw a card, just lets us draw cards. We have a Stinkweed Imp. This card we can dredge for 5, but more importantly, take it from our graveyard, put it into our hand. This is just a nice creature to have because we can continuously play Stinkweed Imp over and over again and constantly have a flyer that we can mutate SnapDax onto. We also have the Underworld Charger, which essentially escapes, but notice this, it escapes with 2+1/+1 counters on it. Remember, all we're really looking for is 2+1/+1 counters on a creature so that we can give that creature Infect, mutate SnapDax, and we win the game. So it actually works really well inside this commander deck. And then we also have the Phyrexia Spawn, which also escapes with 2+1/+1 counters on it. So this card generally works pretty well as well. And then we also have the Ona's Blackguard, which is the final card we're going to talk about today. It says whenever a creature we control with a counter on it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. So it's just a way for us to force removal from our opponents if they have it, because if they don't, we're just going to end up taking your entire hand essentially. So this is the SnapDax commander deck. I know I've been getting a lot of messages from people asking for the deck list and asking for a deck tech for this, so here you go. I hope you appreciate it. If you have any questions about the deck, you can leave those questions in the comment section below. And also the deck list is in the description below as well. Whenever I end these videos, I always say the same thing. Always remember, eat healthy, okay? Work out every single day. And most importantly, you gotta remember to believe in yourself, okay? And when we talk about working out every single day, it's important to keep in mind, you know, when you're exercising, a lot of people think that exercising is specifically for your muscles, that I exercise to grow my muscles and that's all that's happening. And, you know, it's important to know and remember that in order for your body to move, your neurons have to send signals to your muscles that causes them to move. So because your neurons are firing first and your muscles are responding, exercise is not so much you training your muscles. Exercise is actually you training your neurons and the neurological pathways inside your brain. So a person's body, their muscular size, their fitness, where they are is a reflection of how strong the neurons fire inside the brain as opposed to how strong the muscles look. Your muscles are a reflection of how powerful your mind is, not how powerful your muscles are, if that makes sense. So a lot of the time that people are experiencing muscular pain and muscular discomfort, whether it's in their joints, specifically their shoulders, specifically your knees, a lot of times it's not that the area is afflicted or there's something wrong with the area. A lot of times people have neurological pathways that are specific to experiencing pain. So the only way you can relieve that symptom is by exercising that afflicted area lightly and the muscles that are associated with that area, so that you can tell that neurological pathway in your brain to relax. Because the symptom of pain sometimes is usually just a pattern. It's not that it's actually injured, it's just that it's the pattern that's been established. So by exercising an area or the area that's afflicted, you establish a pattern of calm, strength, and relaxation, which over a period of time, if done correctly and safely, can relieve pain. Okay? Just keep that in mind, all right? Believe in yourself, people. Peace out.